Ever feel like we're living in a sci-fi novel?
Kinda, yeah. Why? What makes you say that?
Well, this guy, John Zajac, he saw it coming back in the 80s. Wrote a book about it, The Delicate Balance, all about how technology could be used to control us, and not some far-off future tech, stuff we take for granted today.
He was incredibly prescient, for sure. We rely on tech for, what, practically everything these days? And for this deep dive, we're really unpacking his insights on automation, specifically how it might be setting the stage for a future where we have to constantly choose between control, or our own control, I guess, and convenience.
Exactly. It's like he could see the trade-off coming.
Totally.
So to kick things off, think about something as everyday as, I don't know, going to the grocery store.
Okay, hitting close to home with that one. Hate grocery shopping.
But seriously, when was the last time you actually stopped and thought about those scanners at the checkout?
Can't say I have, really.
Right. It's just become so normal. But that technology, being able to know the price of anything instantly,
Hmm.
that was revolutionary.
Totally. Zajac, he was fascinated by IBM's laser technology. Same stuff behind those scanners, and he saw the potential for it to go way beyond just, speeding up your grocery trip.
Way beyond. This is where it gets really interesting. He was arguing that this tech, it could be used to track consumer behavior on a massive scale.
No way. Like how?
So he called out this system, Behavior Scan, that was being tested in Fresno, California at the time.
Behavior scan?
Yeah, and it's kind of creepy when you think about it. They gave shoppers these cards, bar-coded cards, and these cards tracked every single purchase they made, like down to the brand and how much of something they bought, everything.
Oh, wow. So kind of like how we get targeted ads now based on our browsing history. He saw that coming back then.
Exactly. Zajac even said they were connecting this behavior scan system
Mm-hmm.
to people's TVs.
Do their TVs? Seriously?
Seriously, sending them targeted commercials based on what they were watching
Yeah.
is giving me some major Black Mirror vibes just thinking about it.
Right. He was tapping into that same anxiety we feel now about how technology can be used to not just to observe, but to influence us, like subtly manipulate our behavior.
It's that whole question of, is this level of data collection, is it just the price we pay for convenience in the digital age?
That's the big question, isn't it? Like, what are we willing to give up?
Right. Is it a fair trade-off? And, it wasn't just about targeted ads and stuff. Zajac also went on this whole other tangent about money. Or, well, more like the lack of it.
Yeah, he got into the whole cashless society thing.
Right. Which is wild. Because this is way before Apple Pay, Venmo, all that.
Mm-hmm.
But Zajac, he was already predicting the decline of cash, like back in the 80s.
He really was ahead of the curve on a lot of this stuff.
Totally. And in The Delicate Balance, he actually lays out these three main reasons why he thought cash might eventually, disappear completely.
Interesting. What were they?
Well, I'm kind of curious to hear your take on it, actually. What do you think his reasons were?
Well, given what we've talked about already, I'd guess something to do with the potential for tracking and control with these new technologies, right?
You nailed it. That's a big part of it.
Okay, so what else? Was he worried about things like, I don't know, maybe identity theft with these new kinds of payment systems?
He was definitely thinking along those lines.
Yeah.
But he actually started with something a little bit more low-tech, at least for the time, counterfeiting. He pointed to how fast color copier technology was advancing.
Ah, okay. Making it easier to create fake bills.
Exactly. And he argued that could lead to a surge in counterfeit money, which obviously, throws a wrench in the whole system.
Makes sense. If it's easy to copy, money loses its value. So that was one reason. What was his second?
All right, so for this one, remember those bar-coded cards from Behavior Scan?
Yeah, kind of hard to forget those. A little creepy.
Right. So Zajac took that idea, the whole tracking every purchase thing, even further. He starts talking about what he called smart cards.
Smart cards?
Yeah, basically like early versions of what we have now with credit cards and debit cards, but like way more powerful.
How so?
Well, companies like Motorola and Toshiba were already developing these cards that could store your entire financial history.
Wow. Everything.
He even suggested that they could hold personal data, like health records eventually.
Whoa. That's a lot of information in one place. Convenient, maybe, but also, kind of a gold mine for anyone who managed to get their hands on it.
Right. And that was exactly Zajac's point. He saw how convenient these smart cards could be. But he was also really worried about the potential for abuse. Like, it's great if you lose your wallet, but what if someone else finds it? Or what if the company that issued the card decides to use your information against you?
Yeah, I see where he's coming from. It's that trade-off, again, convenience versus control.
Exactly. Okay, so those were his first 2 points.
Yeah.
Counterfeiting and the rise of these superpowered smart cards. What do you think his third reason was?
Let me guess. Something to do with the government wanting more control.
Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner.
Had to be, right? After all that talk of tracking and these smart cards.
Yep. Zajac was convinced that the government had a vested interest in getting rid of cash completely.
I mean, it makes sense from a certain point of view.
Right. It makes it a lot easier to crack down on, like, the underground economy, stop tax evasion, all that. If all transactions are electronic, it leaves a trail.
A trail that can be followed.
Exactly. And that's what worried Zajac. He saw it as this potential loss of privacy, this move towards a world where everything we do could be monitored.
And it's interesting because a lot of what he was saying back then, it's playing out now, in a way. Like with those smart cards, remember how he said they were already being developed?
Yeah.
Well, by 1990, France had 20 million of these fraud-resistant cards in circulation. 20 million.
Wow. So his predictions weren't that far off.
Not at all. He had this incredible knack for seeing where technology was headed and what the potential consequences might be.
Totally. And this is where things take a turn, I guess you could say.
Right.
Because Zajac, he goes on to connect all of this, the technology, the surveillance, the push for a cashless society. He connects it all to this really specific thing, the number 666.
Oh, wow. Okay, now we're getting into some interesting territory.
So Zajac, he starts talking about 666, the mark of the beast. And honestly, my first thought was, okay, is this going to get a little, conspiracy theory-ish?
I can see why you'd think that. It's not exactly your everyday dinner table conversation.
Right. But then I actually read his explanation, and, well, it's actually rooted in the technology itself.
Yeah.
And it made me think.
That's Zajac for you, always making you think. So how does he tie this back to 6666?
Okay, so he starts by reminding us that computers, they don't think the way we do. They use this binary system, right? Just zeros and ones.
Right, like a light switch. It's either on or off.
Exactly. And for most of us, trying to understand that is like, I don't know, trying to read ancient Greek or something.
Yeah, it's a whole other language.
But somehow, he connects this to 666. How does that even work?
It's about how computers represent the number 6 in binary. It has this unique quality. It's the same backwards and upside down, almost like a secret code within the code. And he found that fascinating.
Okay, that is kind of interesting, but I still don't see how that makes it the mark of the beast.
So remember how Zajac talked about this idea of the beast, this all-powerful computer system controlling global finances?
Yeah, like not a literal beast, right?
Yep.
More like a symbolic one.
Exactly. He saw the way computers use the number 6, this kind of hidden code, as symbolic of how this system, this beast, could operate, working behind the scenes, subtly influencing things.
So not a monster under the bed, but like a monster in the mainframe.
Exactly. And this is where that quote comes in. He who controls the system controls all. He wasn't just talking about computers, but about the potential for these systems to be used to control people.
Yeah, that's what's so unnerving about it. Because it's not so far-fetched when you think about it.
Not at all, especially when you look at the advancements in technology even since Zajac's time. We've got facial recognition, AI, data collection, on a scale he probably couldn't have imagined back then.
It's almost like we're living in the future he was warning us about.
In a way, yeah. But I also think it's about heeding his warning, not being afraid of it. Like you said earlier, it makes you think.
Totally. And we've talked about surveillance and the whole idea of a cashless society. But Zajac was really concerned about this possibility of, like, implanted microchips.
Which back then probably seemed like something out of science fiction.
Right. But now, I mean, we've got people putting microchips in their hands to, like, open doors and stuff. It's not that far off from what he was describing.
Not at all. And that's what makes his work so relevant, even today. It's a reminder to be mindful of the choices we make, both individually and as a society, about the role we want technology to play in our lives.
Absolutely. We've got to find that balance between the convenience and the control.
Exactly. And it's not always an easy balance to strike. But the more we talk about it, the more we're aware of the potential pitfalls, the better equipped we'll be to make those choices.
I completely agree. So as we wrap things up here, I think the big takeaway from Zajac's The Delicate Balance is that the future isn't predetermined. We're not just cogs in some machine. We have agency. We have choices to make.
We do. Every swipe of a card, every click online, it's a choice. So yeah, let's all try to be a little more mindful of those choices.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into John Zajac's The Delicate Balance.